Hello, hello. How lovely to be here. Well, that song that you've just heard, I could say I was young and needed the money, but I see no reason to apologize for it. It was really a lovely thing to be able to do jingles, but we have suffered also there from the visions of the future where things change. And of course, change is a good thing, and innovation, of course, is wonderful, but sometimes it can so happen that people come under the wheels, and things sometimes don't change for the better. But we don't want to just sort of cry about it. There must be ways to find new ways forward. But first of all, I mean, these things that happen, disruption we've heard today, something positive. Disruptive technologies can very much get in the way of people's livelihoods. We heard yesterday about the Encyclopedia Britannica and how that from one day to the next day just suddenly disappeared. I met somebody at a dinner party who was running the company Telex. And of course, the fax machine came, and he was totally out of work the next day. And if we look here up at these charts, we can see things that are going to change our lives. Things like the Amazon drones, that'll be for drivers of goods vehicles, what's happened with Uber and taxis. And a lot more things are going to happen. Now, that's general, but now music specific in my branch as well, lots of things have changed. You know, when they came out with recorded music, all of the musicians were, what's going to happen to us? We won't have any jobs anymore. Of course they did, but not quite as many. There was not as many chances to play live. And then after that, sometime in the 60s, synthesizers came. And in Britain, the Musicians' Union were banning synthesizers and stringing machines because it was putting musicians out of work. So there's always been this thing of trying to stop innovation because it's not always for the better. I remember in 1983 when MIDI came, that's Musical Instrument Digital Interface. Wow, digital. You know, don't have to turn knobs anymore and can play here and the sound comes out there. And very quickly after that, the computer came, and that was really an amazing change. And there are people that would say that this was the beginning of the democratization of the production. And of course it was. It gave a lot of people access to actually making music, which is a good thing. But if you were to have Steinway pianos suddenly costing only 300 euros, you wouldn't really get better music. You'd just have a lot of better sounding versions of chopsticks. So it's not always that what it's made out to be. Now, artificial intelligence is one of the buzzwords I've heard probably a million times here. And so, of course, I have to say what is happening then in the music branch. Yes, we have it too. But let's have a little listen to what does it sound like. This is like having one of your bots that we've seen earlier on actually sitting down writing a piece of music. You'd probably do it in about 3 milliseconds, and this is what would come out. Okay, well, I think I'll stop it off there. As you can hear, it's rather symmetrical, but it is music. But at the moment, it's sort of imitation. It's taking little bits and putting them together, logical. But the more it learns, the more it will know. So why not? But at the moment, do we fear for our jobs? Yeah, we do, but not because of that. There's lots of other reasons and things which are standing in our way. But what to do when we find, as a taxi driver, that Uber's taking over? The thing is to try to find new ways, to really see that you have to reinvent yourself. You have to have some kind of change strategy. Now, I'd like to recommend a book that changed my life. That sounds very religious, but this book is called Who Moved My Cheese? And you should write that down because it's a wonderful book. Very, very short. You can read it just in an hour or so. But the ideas contained in that are wonderful. I'm not going to tell you that now because I don't have time. But as the response to that, I actually changed my cheese and found myself new cheese. And this is the basis of it. So the thing there was thinking about change and getting old is to perhaps turn that, what could be negative, into something positive and say it's not a bug, it's a feature. And this is the experience that one gains after writing jingles and things like that, music for communication, of actually thinking what happens behind the scenes there. And these days it's very easy to learn because we have YouTube and Google. I see somebody smiling there, but believe me, you can learn an awful lot from watching YouTube videos these days. So it is about actually finding new cheese, going back to school and learning how sound affects us and seeing what kind of proof of concept is there out there. And for those of you who think music is just something nice to have, you should also perhaps learn a little bit and read about it, because music and sound can communicate incredibly well. And if you are neglecting it, then you're neglecting a very valuable tool for communicating. And even though you may be using music and sound at the time, you'll be seeing that if you use it in the wrong way, it's probably better not to use music and sound at all, because it can be incredibly intrusive and can have the wrong effect. But now, if we're doing music for communicating for companies, then it's actually working together for the brand. We call it sound branding, and it becomes an integral part of the corporate design, and it's actually used with as much rules and as much attention to detail as visual communication. We have also clients like in Germany, Datev, who are a B2B company, who have a very, very good way of working with the sound identity. And this is for the last 10 years or so. It's nothing new. But anyway, sound branding is something which can actually give measurable results. What it is about is just about communicating the ideas of the brand and using them continuously and consistently in all touch points and all the time, and giving the perception then in the ear of the brand. So we say your sound everywhere and always. And this means not just choosing the sound by saying like and don't like. There are objective parameters to be followed. And this means having a system. When you have a system, what happens is all of these things come together and that they are aligned. Now, to do that, you have to know what effect this sound and music is having on the minds of the people you're communicating to. So this is where psychoacoustics comes in. Now, this is another buzzword. The expression is a rather new one, and it's becoming a lot more prevalent when we talk about games and things such as that, when people want to know actually how can one enhance the user experience using sound and music. So it's basically the observation of the effect of sound on the brain, but it's coming from the perspective of the listener. Now, when we look at what's happening in the brain, we see that we can actually measure a lot more than it's been possible before. The actual technology there has been going in leaps and bounds, so we can understand a lot more. We can shove people in a tube, give them music on the headphones, and we can actually see what part of their brain is lighting up. So we can actually see what is working, which is very different from just playing a jingle. They would just have to see if the people sing along with it. So we're talking about two things here at the moment. We're talking about the physiological and neural perceptions, and these are the kind of sounds and things that you will have in your memory, music that you've learnt and that you've heard before, and will be able to access these thoughts and that feelings by using the music as a stimulus to trigger these effects. And then there's another kind of music which is just purely neurological. And there's also just sound. Who knows about Pavlov's dog? Hands up. Okay, that's not everybody. Then I must tell you that Mr. Pavlov, or Dr. Pavlov, was working on gastric juices, and he was using dogs for his testing. And he had a pipe in their stomachs, and to remind the staff to feed them, they had a bell which rang. And one day, the bell rang, and somebody didn't feed the dog. But the dog started dribbling anyway. So it was possible to see that the dog had learned ding-a-ling-a-ling means food is coming. So that was one time when it was documented that you can actually trigger responses through a sound, which is the basis of a lot of my work. Now, sonification is something which is very, very interesting. I'll read this to you, the process of transforming information into sound. It provides another channel of information via an additional sense and gives the recipient a different perspective from which to observe and interpret information. Now, we've heard this in a few of the apps where a sound will actually be used as a warning. It will give us information via our ears because we may not always be looking. But it can give a lot more effect than just beeps. Here, I think I will demonstrate what I mean. Yeah, well, that's what can happen. As I said, sound in that way can be terribly intrusive. Now, we've taken the actual products themselves, like for instance, here we have a picture from one of our clients in Japan, Olympus. As we'd already done the sound for their camera, now people can say sound for the camera. Yes, many years ago, we actually designed the navigational sounds, and we put their sound logo in the camera. And this little sound said Olympus. And the people learned that just like the Pavlov's dog, because when they called on the telephone there, the first thing they heard was that. And in television advertising globally, they heard that. So it was all over the place, was not enough to get on people's nerves like this, but had the information of the company name. Now, what we did with these machines was they were all beeping a little bit similar to that. We were able to create a measurable sense of quality just via the sound. Now, here's something which will probably interest a lot of you for cybersecurity. We recently have done a job where we have actually put sound to a cybersecurity monitoring system. So all over the globe, various attacks have been noted and registered. And going through an API, we are able to trigger various sounds. Now, these sounds communicate a lot of different things. They can communicate what kind of attack it is, because there's a lot of different attacks, and can also tell us the intensity. So if you're not watching the screen at one moment and there's suddenly a lot of attacks happening somewhere at one particular time, you can get an alert. So using this sonification idea, here also Verband in Austria were able to develop something to monitor their dam, to be able to look at the status of the turbines and to see what's happening using sound. So it's rather amazing that sound and music is so neglected. Now, lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about healthcare, because this is something which interests me specifically these days. We can use sound and music to help people with stress. If we can reduce stress, we can reduce the likelihood of further real bad sickness. So we can keep people healthier, we can reduce lost work days by just doing prevention when things are not bad. And the same thing is with sleep. Now, sleep is like an epidemic. It's really amazing. You'll see everybody you talk to, every second person has a problem. And believe me, that by listening to the right kind of sounds, this can be reduced greatly. Now, I'm not talking about meditation, although meditation is good. This is something where you don't even have to learn anything and you don't have to practice. You don't even have to listen, you just have to hear. But you have to take the initial 10 minutes to try these things out. Nothing new. If we look here, this guy here, Pythagoras, 500 years before Christ was born, he was already talking about using music and certain intervals and certain sounds. These days, we know exactly what kind of neuroreceptors are being talked to when we do certain sounds. And we can actually generate feelings of relaxation. We can also make people concentrate better and be a lot more focused on what they're doing. So all these things are really possible with new techniques such as brainwave entrainment. So I won't explain, because I don't have the time, what brainwave entrainment is or ASMR, but this is all available on our website. With sound and music, you can get very similar sound, very similar effects to that what you can with drugs. But the delivery is remote. You can actually do this over an app. You can do it over one of these wonderful new boxes that everyone soon will have in their living rooms. And also, you can do it in environments. Now, healing environments is something that very few people know of, the power of the music when you're actually in a hospital or somewhere or in a waiting environment. I'll leave you with Sonic Tonic. Sonic Tonic is an app which you will all be getting access to. And I suggest you check it out yourself. Also for corporate health, this will be the next thing actually for having companies actually use it instead of giving access to a gym. And the amazing thing which I like to tell you, which is probably more amazing than any of these facts, is that I have finished my presentation on time. So thank you very much.